Bob, thank you so much for joining us. Now, you are also somebody who was supporting Liz Truss and not Rishi Sunak. Has he got your vote now? Are you going to get behind him?
That's not quite true. Actually, my first choice in the summer was Penny,
Yes.
and I consistently supported Penny this time round as well. So I was very much a Penny backer, and Penny would have made a great Prime Minister, but I think Rishi is actually also going to make a great Prime Minister as well. I think he's made a great start. Can I just correct something that you said, Angela?
Yes.
Very nice to see you and your listeners. We don't have the far right. Somebody said the far right in the Conservatives. We have Conservatives in the Conservative Party.
I was quoting the front page of the Eye today, which is referring to the far right, and indeed some of your own MPs have referred to the far right.
Yes. That's left-wing commentators, and they can say what we want, but we don't have the far right in the Conservative Party, so let me just correct that.
Yeah, but do you believe that Rishi is the man who is actually going to bring, whatever faction you are, is going to bring everybody in the Conservative Party, not just in the House of Commons, but also in the country, bring you all together?
Yes, I do. Look, I think Penny and Rishi would have done very similar things, and I think Rishi is being very sensible. He's bringing together, I'm not sure we have factions. I'd like to put it, we have different voices. You have conservatives, and you have more sort of right of the party and the left of the party. For sure. Is Rishi going to bring them together? Yes. And frankly, the mistakes in the Boris government, and sadly probably in the Liz government as well, was there wasn't enough of an attempt to make sure different voices were heard. And I think one of the things that Rishi has got right, one of the many things that Rishi has got right this week, is the fact that he's making sure that that there are different groups within the party and different voices, and we've got those reflected in his cabinet. So I think from that point of view, I think it's been a fantastic start.
Yeah. How do you think he's going to deal with people like Rees-Mogg and others who are now on the back benches? Do you think they're going to cause trouble for him, or are party members in general, are Conservative MPs in general, just going to say, look, lay off, let's give them a go?
I think in general, what I hope is that there isn't going to be this sort of personality factionalism, and I see no evidence that there might be in that. I'm very much hoping we don't have that, because I think for me there are really important arguments to be had over policy, like, for example, planning. Like, for example, how we deal with Russia in future, how we deal with building up a cross-government attitude towards China. So there are significant policy issues that we need to be discussing and agreeing on. And for people to be getting involved in those from the backbenches, I think is entirely laudable, because those are the sort of issues that we need to be talking about real politics again. We need to be moving away from who leads our party. That matter, I have no doubt, is now settled. Rishi will lead us into the election. And I think increasingly, what you're saying is correct. There are going to be some increasingly difficult choices to make. But I think as Rishi makes those choices, it's going to become increasingly evident that he's the right man to lead us. And I think for Keir Starmer, the future is not looking bright. But I think for us, once we get through this difficult 6 months, difficult year, difficult 18 months, for however long the energy inflation and cost of living spike happen, I think increasingly people will put their trust back in Rishi and the Conservatives. And I'm incredibly confident, actually. That's not to assume there aren't some big and difficult decisions coming. There are.
That's what I want to ask you about, because Dom there was just telling me the things that he would like to see Rishi Sunak do to bring the party together and to actually, live up to the expectations that everybody has of him. What do you want to see him doing that would ensure that in the next general election you'll keep your seat there on the Isle of Wight?
Well, I hope I'm going to keep my seat, because I'm a very hard-working constituency MP, and I've delivered more than £120 million of additional investment into the island's infrastructure, in the NHS and transport, in shipbuilding in East Cowes and elsewhere. So I have a very strong track record here, which I'm hoping is going to make sure that I'm okay, but I take nothing for granted. Rishi has to deal with the immediate crisis, and then towards the next election, wherever possible, he needs to get taxes down. And I think the one thing that Don was saying, one of the many things he was saying that was spot on, is that we need to remember our voter base. So Rishi needs to remember the folks in Southampton, where he came from, as I'm sure he's going to, the small businesses. He needs to be supporting those wealth creators, those entrepreneurs in our society. But also, this is the pharmacists and the doctors and the GPs, and making sure they can be doing their jobs, treating people as well. So there are there's a lot of sensible, moderate reform that we can be doing to make sure our country runs better, to make sure our public services run better, but also ensuring that our businessmen and entrepreneurs, businesswomen, can actually create the wealth that we need to pay for all the good things in our society. But this week, I'm incredibly confident of what's going to be happening in our future, notwithstanding these significant decisions we need to get through in the next 18 months.
sufficiently confident to be able to say that you think that Rishi Sunak is the man who will take the Conservatives through to a win at the next general election?
Oh, I think it's all to play for. People writing off us now. Look, I mean, 3 years ago, we were set for a decade in government, and then this summer, it was all sort of disaster. Look, we've had a period of instability. The end of Boris, Liz's short-term in government sadly went too far too fast. Some really good supply-side ideas, and now we've got Rishi. Rishi is going to lead us into the next election. There is no doubt about that. We are now a united party again. For those people who think the dramas and the psychodramas and the soap opera is going to continue, it ain't. We're done. We're now back to normal politics, and there's a very, very big and serious in tray, whether it's the energy crisis, the inflation spike, the cost of living, the war in Ukraine, all the things that we need to do to stabilise the public finances. So we've got to really, we're getting back to serious, normal politics, which I think many of us welcome, and I welcome, because it means that there are ministers that are going to be in place in the next 6 months, in the next year, in the next 18 months. So when I'm writing to them about the need for a new special needs school on the Isle of Wight, I know that the minister I'm dealing with this month is going to be the minister I'm dealing with in 6 months who's going to give me that project. You know, when I'm talking about the repair of Ryde Railway Bridge, you know, which is now, Ryde Railway Pier, which is going to be starting very soon, I know which minister to invite down next spring. We're going to have stable government, which is very good for people like me, because it means I can deliver for my folks on the island, and other constituents MPs can be battling to deliver for their constituents up and down the country.